the mid-1960s, in the days of pirate radio, with my comfy chair guest. And he's from Australia. He's here in Hull, and I suspect a while since he's been in Hull. It is Noel Miller. Noel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Andy.
When was the last time you were in Hull?
The bridge wasn't here. We just drove through. My wife said, "Do you remember the bridge?" And I said, "No, I don't remember the bridge." And I Paul Rosling's with me, and Paul, and I was thankful to know that I don't have Alzheimer's. It wasn't built till the 70s.
That's right.
Yes.
But officially opened in 81, built during the 70s. That's
right. Okay.
I think they would have been talking about it in the 60s. I think they were talking about it in the 1860s, frankly, but they've been talking about it for a while. But yeah,
we used to hang around a bit up here.
Yeah, what was it like?
Well, the boat sort of came in every now and snuck in for some stores and some water, and maybe to repair the odd mast that used to fall off. In fact, on April Fool's Day, it was meant to open in 1966, and the mast fell off.
Oh dear. It was the Ocean 7, wasn't it? Was that
the Ocean 7, which was a Dutch lugger converted into with a studios down below deck. 2 studios only. I suppose you could fit 2 studios into half of the studio we're sitting in now.
Yeah.
Gives you an idea of how small it was. With 1 on-air studio and 1 news studio. And the DJ's quarters were where they used to dump all the fish.
Nice.
In the hold, yes. They'd clean them out. And anyway, because of its size and the fact it was built from the North Sea, it did rock a bit. So the mast wasn't properly secured and it fell off. So then they 8 weeks, and they put a new mast on, got it all going. We got off Scarborough, and 8 weeks later we're on air.
I mean, just how did it get on air? I mean, what was the background to it? Because I mean, there were these pirate stations springing up at the time. Right. So what was the story there?
Well, the first inkling of it came from Don Robinson, who was a promoter, and he got it up and running. And then later on, a lot of businessmen, they were on board with the help of Wilf Proudfoot, who became the managing director. Initially, it was supposed to be a sort of a BBC Light program, but it was decided that that's not going to attract listeners away from BBC Light. So they thought we'd better do something about, like, Top 40. And what do we do about that? They got me on board because, I happened to be a friend of a friend of a friend. And I got the job as the program director and turned it into a Top 40 station. And we were covering 15 million people.
And just describe what a typical day on board. What was life like on board?
You had a breakfast program just like any other radio station. 6 to 9 breakfast. 9 to 12 was a sort of a morning show, which was softer than it would be today because there was a different lifestyle. Then between 12 and 2, that was the lunchtime show. 1 lunchtime show was mine, the other was a fellow Boots Bowman. So there's Neddy Noel lunchtime show, the Boots Bowman lunchtime show, 1 week on, 1 week off. The afternoon was an afternoon program. Then there was another sort of a fairly rocky sort of a show that happened between 4 and 6, and then the evening programs came on and we went off air about 1 o'clock in the morning. But it didn't finish there because we only had 1 studio. That was the only time we could record commercials. All commercials were recorded on board the boat, all read live. So the only time you could actually record was after hours. So we had an old Revox, a Grundig actually, that used to be used for the commercials. And we used to open the studio doors and use both playhead and record head to get reverb. You're smiling, but that was pretty primitive. But it had a good sound, that radio station. But we had to record like that in order to cut through. You were talking before about you had an air check of me and it was pretty crackly. Well, if you didn't have that sort of reverb sound behind it, you wouldn't have been able to hear us.
Let's hear a bit of you now. We're going to hear a bit of Radio 270, recording of your good self. Here we go.
21 minutes to 1 o'clock is the time on the Neddy Noel lunchtime show. The Butlers and the Poppers. The Butlers and the Poppers, and I saw her again last night. And it's the number 6 record on the 27040 at the moment. Now, whatever you sell, shoes, ships, sealing wax, whatever you sell, want an advertise on 270. Write to us for full details, and you will be surprised how little it will cost you. 270 Scarborough. That's where you write. We'll send you the rate card and everything you need to know all about 270. Do it riding along.
So what I write to us, 270 Scarborough. That was the address.
That was it.
And that got to you.
Not a problem. And the letters, you wouldn't believe. So anything we could sell, be it T-shirts or scarves, whatever, you name it, we were flogging it.
You talked earlier about sneaking in ashore. So, I mean, clearly you had to come in for supplies, you had to come back. How did that work then?
Well, after we go off air, we'd silently chug into wherever we could. Scarborough for water maybe sometimes, but we were illegal. There's no doubt about it. And, of course, that's when we were closed down in August the 14th, 1967, because it was illegal to even supply us, work on it, advertise on it, do anything. They shut us down completely. Some went at 12, I think Caroline went 12 miles off, but they had to be tendered from elsewhere. You couldn't tender them from Britain, otherwise you'd be in jail. And that shut us down completely. The end of the story.
Wow, and there was a bit. I'll play a little bit of you talking about the BBC, because obviously, I mean, the BBC were.
You're not going to arrest me now, are you? It's a long time since then.
I know, it's all right.
Why are there policemen at the door? You've got cops everywhere here.
You'll be allowed off the premises, don't worry.
Oh,
but
my God.
Some views of the BBC here from Radio 2.
Everyone.
Hello there, this is your roving reporter. I have a gentleman with me at the moment. I'm about to ask him a question. Sir, how do you feel about the government trying to close down pirate radio stations?
Well, I think it's about time they did. They should have done it 40 years ago. I mean, we've got these offshore commercial stations. What do we need pirates for?
Oh, yes. I was reading in the paper, the BBC, what is it, 247 they're going to start up a music station to compete with the offshore commercial stations. And, of course, it'll be music all day. Pretty much the same as the light, except they're going to cut out the bells and a couple of things, and a little bit of bark and all that to rescue mind at certain parts of the day. Well, this is the sort of thing that we want to stop, and this is the thing that people of Britain should want to stop. I don't think you want this at all, because you have commercial radio. You've proved you want to listen to commercial radio, so why not have commercial radio instead of trying to muck around? I don't know what they're trying to do.
Hey, good. Oh, good bit of politics there. Hey, good.
Well,
but that's what it was like, wasn't it? That was the situation.
That was the situation.
And the BBC was clearly scared by this competition off the coast. Thought they were going to have to do something, get a bit of this action, were they?
Yeah, I don't think it was. In the end, it wasn't so much the BBC. It was the government worried about the politics of a different persuasion coming out of pirate radio. It wasn't so much the free radio fight. Yeah. It was more or less. I think free radio was inevitable. It was inevitable. If maybe I think we made it happen a lot more quickly. It might have, but eventually. I mean, now radio's under threat from everything. So it would have changed eventually. But I think we quickened things up. But the government was more worried about the politics than the BBC. I don't think the BBC. You're in your tower. You don't worry about us, little riffraff. Bobbing around in the sea, telling her what to do.
Fancy that. Government worried about broadcasting.
No,
something's never changed there.
Never.
Now, 270, the ship went into Bridlington, didn't it? And Grimsby
Quite
as well?
a few times, yes. Because the captains were from Hull, mainly,
right.
Yes. And the ship was fitted out at Grimsby. And a lot of work was done on the boat there, especially when it... after the storm in November, and that's what that song, The Ballad of 270, see, I slipped that in there, you noticed that.
Which you wrote.
But that is all about that particular storm which put us off air, and people were running up and down the shore. They thought we were gone, we're finished, because we didn't know where we were, because we had to sail into the waves, and I've never seen anything like that, and never will again in my life. You're looking up one minute and down the next with these wave troughs in the North Sea. It's a vicious place. It was a force 11 gale.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, you paint a very vivid picture of life on board, but of course, ashore, you did try and get a job at the BBC, didn't you? You went for an interview.
When I first started, yes, I came to the BBC, and they said, if you just give us your name, and we'll find some little spots for you. So I did these panel shows, I can't. We were talking about it before. I can't remember half the names of them, but it was Did He Tell a Lie or things like that. And you sit on a panel with a whole lot of famous people. I was the only person I didn't know, and answer questions and try to be funny, and you get £10 for that, which is more.
Which was good in those days, wasn't it?
That was a week's wages.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, wow. And yeah. So, I mean, where did your career take you? Because obviously, I mean, 270, it was just over a year, wasn't it, before you went off air in August 67. So where did your career take you from there?
Oh, well, I went back to Australia. I went through all through America, looked at radio stations there, went back to Australia with all these ideas which nobody was really interested in. So I just got back into it and ended up one of the first people to be involved in FM radio in Sydney and Triple M FM, and then I went to Fox FM in Melbourne and various radio stations, and finished up at 2SM in Sydney, and that was about it. And I've been a retailer and lots of other things, and still dabbled in community radio. That's where, old jocks never die. They ended up in community radio. And I just do DVD reviews and things like that.
And you're a singer?
I write songs, yes.
Write songs?
I write songs.
Doing pretty well?
Sing songs. Well, it's not under my name. It's under the Ned Miller Band.
Mm-hmm.
And write songs. And I wrote it was actually with Paul Rosling's encouragement that I wrote the Ballad of 270, which was about the dreadful storm.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote that because a lot of people didn't really understand what 270 was all about. And I don't think they do. And I think that's a shame, because I went to Scarborough and I was having a drink at a bar, and I talked to a young girl in there, and we're overlooking where the ship was. And I said, "Ever heard of Radio 270? No." He said, "What is it?" And I said, "No, it was a radio station." She said, "Oh, how do you get onto it?" And I said, "Oh, it's gone. It's finished."
Bit too late.
Yeah.
It'd be great to talk to you. Just finally, I mean, in terms of radio, obviously it's changed so much over the years. Do you think it'll always be there? Because as you say, the different competition now. It's not the BBC versus the pirates. You've got digital, you've got TV, you've got downloads. Has radio got a future?
Yes. It has got a future.
Good
and
answer.
I think it'll come back.
Yeah.
And I think you've always got to have personality in radio.
Yeah.
My God, you feel like listening to somebody actually saying something in the minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Great to talk to you, Noel. We're going to go out with the Beatles paperback writer. Is this a favourite?
Favourite, yes.
All right. Great to talk to you. Thanks for coming in.